Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Trench with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today we are joined by a very special guest, Ryan, the host of Jets Talk 24/7. Does a great job with his channel. Thanks for coming on. How's it going?
It's going good. I mean, our Jets are 6-3 sitting at the bye. We have the most important game of our, Jet fanhood in the last decade coming up this week. It's good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on. I know you're doing a lot on your channel. I guess we'll start off kind of just right off the top, like you mentioned, big game coming up this weekend. But your thoughts, kind of overall this year on the season so far? 6-3, big win against Buffalo. The bye week for us fans was a long one. Thankfully, it's Friday. We're getting closer to Sunday. Kind of your thoughts on the season so far? Is started out with Flacco, was rough, and then goes to Wilson and 6-3 in a prime spot to take over the division this weekend. Your thoughts on the kind of the season as a whole?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's nice to be making content for a team that's actually winning some games this year. We
Yeah.
had the expectation going into the season was, I felt like the low end should be 7 wins. Anything below that would be a failure of a
Mm-hmm.
season. And then I expected us to get get to 9-8, and have a really
Mm-hmm.
respectable year. I wanted to see that little Jet logo in December in the hunt. And that's a successful season for me. But now that we're sitting at 6-3, you have to change your perspective a little bit. And now at this point, I think it's a disappointment if we don't make the playoffs. And I think, we only have to get to 4-4 over these next 8 games to get that 10-win mark. So I don't want to say it's a disappointment if we don't get to 10 wins. I would say my
Mm-hmm.
adjusted floor is probably the 9 wins that I was hoping for initially.
Mm-hmm.
But I think 10-7 is the most likely outcome. But I think I'd like to see us get to 11-5, and I think we have the defense to play with anyone in the NFL. Offensive line or offensive wise, we still haven't really hit the ground running or like started clicking on all cylinders on that side of the ball. And to be at this point in the season with this record, with all the talent we have, and to see it not clicking just yet is kind of encouraging because the growth is so much
Mm-hmm.
higher.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's so much young talent and guys that are going to be here. You hope for a very long time, and under this coaching staff and stuff like that, it's definitely a bright future. And we were talking about it prior, like the whole Todd Bowles era. We knew that wasn't really going to last. You feel like this is a young nucleus that can have winning sustained for many years to come. So it's definitely been great. I guess we'll start off with the offensive side of the ball, then we'll go to the defenses, which has been spectacular this year, as you mentioned. We'll start off with the coordinator, then we'll get to the positions. Kind of your thoughts this year on Matt LaFleur. Same thing with Wilson, him kind of being in his second year as a coordinator, taking over the play calling. Obviously, your thoughts on Matt LaFleur, or Mike LaFleur rather, and what he's kind of his season so far, and moving up into the booth last year, did a better job last season into this season. Yeah, your thoughts on Mike LaFleur?
Yeah, I like him. I think he's the best offensive coordinator that we've had since, I like to say, John Morton, the
Mm-hmm.
coordinator we got from New Orleans a few years back when he had the season with McCown. Um, I really like LaFleur a lot. I like a lot of the motion that he's using. I think his playbook is a little too big. I think there's definitely some cause for I don't want to say cause for concern, but maybe there's some complicated nuances to it that have maybe prevented guys like Denzel Mims or Elijah Moore to be able to get the ball earlier in the season or last
Mm-hmm.
year in the case of Mims. And then it's also just like really thick. Like you hear other people talk about it, it's like, wow, it's just a lot of friggin' plays. But by and
Yep.
large, I mean, it seems like he's a really good coordinator. When you look at all the quarterbacks that we've had under LaFleur, that LaFleur has coached, you're talking Flacco,
Mm-hmm.
Johnson, Mike White, all had 300-yard games last year.
Yep.
Zach got his first 300-yard game this year. Even the quarterbacks in Pickett and Ritter that we had on our Senior Bowl team performed well under the same sort of system. So it's encouraging to me to feel like we have the right coaching staff in place, and that any issues in the quarterback room might just be stemming from the quarterback itself.
Mm-hmm.
Play calling wise, maybe a few head scratchers here and there, but it looks like to me from like, a relatively untrained eye that there's wide receivers running open. It looks like guys like the scheme is working. It's just a matter of can
Yep.
the quarterback put all the pieces together?
Yeah, and I totally agree with that because, like you mentioned, I mean, even Mike White last year with the crazy game against Cincinnati. It shows that the offense can work. It's just a matter of, like you mentioned, getting the quarterback that can, succeed. And Wilson this year, when he plays within the offense and takes what the defense is giving him, we win games that way. And the run game has been a big factor and been a big part of this offense. And it shows that it can work, and that it's up to Zach Wilson, the quarterback spot, to make that leap, to get better, and to be that quarterback that we drafted second overall out of BYU. So we now go to Zach Wilson. You kind of mentioned it. It's kind of been an interesting start for him. He's been record very good as a starter, but he hasn't had that big explosive, like 330-yard game with 3 touchdowns and, complete percentage of, 60-70%. He looked a lot better last week against Buffalo after the rough performance against New England. Kind of your thoughts on Zach Wilson so far this season and what you want to see the remaining 8 games.
So I think Zach Wilson is the most talented athletically quarterback that we've ever had. Maybe dating back to, if you want to say the one season with Brett Favre with the arm strength, but aside from that, since I've been watching since 95, there's definitely no one in the same wheelhouse as Zach as far as his athletic gifts go. And I think that's why you draft him at number 2 overall. I think it's very easy to sit here today and play Monday morning quarterback or Monday morning GM and say, oh, well, look what Justin Fields is doing right now over in Chicago. He's got 125 yards on the ground each of the last 2 games. Or Mac Jones gets his team to the playoffs last year, or there's all these what if situations. But the athletic upside that Zach has, even if the bust potential might be a little bit higher, he's drafted at number 2 for that athletic upside and what he could possibly do. And I think if you can get him to a level of like Jimmy Garoppolo, but has the athletic upside of someone like, I don't want to say like a Trey Lance, but like, just a strong arm, mobile outside of the pocket, a little bit more athletically gifted than Jimmy G, but you're getting the protection of the football like Jimmy G. Jimmy G doesn't turn the football over. You see how well that offense runs. When you have a strong defense, a good offensive line, you can make it to the playoffs and you can make it to a Super Bowl. And I think Zach has that kind of talent. Now, for me, when I'm looking at the play calling and I'm looking at the plays each and every week, I'm seeing Zach perform his best when he can play with instincts and like quick judgments. Like that's what I want to see. When you see him hold on to the ball for 3.5 seconds, which is what his average snap to throw has been this entire season, he starts to make mistakes. He starts to run around doing a little bit of, ballerina dancing in the backfield. When you have him, like in the Buffalo game, they shaved almost a second. I think it was 0.8 seconds off of that snap to throw time, which allowed him to get the ball out a little bit quicker. The defensive lines were not able to get to him for a sack because you're helping your offensive line by getting the ball out a little bit quicker. And I think if we continue to see more of that, as well as I want to see him utilize his legs. He's really mobile, and we got to see it a few times last week where he captured 2 critical first downs. Now, the first one, unfortunately, was negated because of that 12-minute delay of game with the camera. And,
the sky cam.
We had that nice little 10-yard scamper on 3rd down, got us a first down, got us in scoring position, and then, obviously that happened. The very next drive, Josh Allen throws the interception to Sauce, and then Zach picks up another critical 3rd down. I think it was 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4. And then the very next play after that, he scores the touchdown to James Robinson. So I think if he can get 1 or 2 of those rushing first downs to keep drives alive each week, I think even if he only has 150 to 200 yards passing, if he can get another 25 on the ground with 2 first downs in it, I think we're going to win a lot of football games.
Yeah, and that was, like you mentioned, the rushing aspect of it. That was a positive because the week prior against New England, there was that one play late in the game, and it was I think a 4th down and 8 where he had 10, 15 yards of green grass in front of him, and he threw it to Conklin, 20 yards downfield in the end zone. It was a bad throw. He had a ton of grass in front of him, should have took it. He did that well against Buffalo. You'd like to see more of that, so I totally agree on that. Now you go to the running backs, and Breece Hall, it's just every time, I see a stat, scrolling through all the sports apps about, his season up to that point, like it hurts because he was so good and like he was on pace to have an historic year for a rookie. Your thoughts on kind of Breece Hall, and then we'll get to Michael Carter and James Robinson.
Yeah, I'll admit I was not overly happy with the Breece Hall selection. I really like Michael
Mhm.
Carter. I think he's a phenomenal running
Yeah.
back, and I wanted to pair him with someone in the fourth or fifth round. I thought second round, you can get a linebacker, you can get a safety, you can, round out
Mhm.
maybe some other positions in need there. And we
Yep.
decided to trade up, let alone for for a running back. And I was like
Yeah.
totally caught off guard. Breece Hall is phenomenal college running back. I was like, all right, well, we're balling out this year at the very least. And his slow start to the season, like through training camp, the first 3 4 weeks or so, I'm like biting my nails. I'm like, oh man, we just blew a second round pick on a guy who's not as good as the guy we already had. And then he just
Yeah.
goes off and he's like running all over the place. And it's and I'm like, okay, we got a dude. We got a
Yeah.
guy. We got AVT. We got Breece. We got like this whole offense is loaded. And then we go to Denver and it all gets taken from us,
Yeah.
within like 10 minutes of one another. And for me, I'm looking at it, I'm saying, man, this team is really good. I feel like we can compete with anyone. But if we had AVT, if we had Breece
Yeah.
Hall, like what could we be? And I think that is probably the bittersweet part of this. Like I
Mhm.
know our future is bright, but I think we can compete this year. And losing arguably our two best offensive
Yeah.
pieces in one game was really painful.
Yeah, and that game against Denver, one of the main reasons we won is because of his really the only reason we won was because of that 60-yard touchdown. Now, obviously the defense played a big role too, but losing both of them in that game was just awful. It feels like forever ago that game took place, but he was awesome, and you hope that he can bounce back and have that same explosiveness that he had to start the year. Especially like you said, after kind of the first couple games is when he really started to explode. Um, so you now go to the Michael Carter and Robinson. You mentioned it. I like Michael Carter a lot. You obviously said, you like Michael Carter a lot. He had a very solid rookie season last year, has taken on a leadership role. He's well respected around the locker room, and he's only a second-year player. But what I really liked is, I also want to hear, more of your thoughts on Carter too, but I like the way that Joe Douglas, after Breece Hall got hurt, less than 24 hours, same day, went out and got James Robinson. And it shows you that, he is fully bought in on winning. He's still obviously building for the future, but he believes that this team can win now, can win this season, like you mentioned. And he went out and got him. Your thoughts kind of on James Robinson so far, and do you expect him to get a bigger role coming out of the bye week as he kind of had a week to gather himself, learn more of the playbook, just, with the bye week after, getting traded and only having the 2 games under his belt?
Yeah, it was really impressive from Joe Douglas, and I like that they made a move. I wasn't sure who they were going to go for. I thought
Mhm.
maybe one of the Cleveland running backs, or maybe they
Yeah.
reach out to someone who was in a system similar to this little floor system, maybe like a Cam Akers out in LA.
Mhm.
And to see him come in, I'm thinking, I'm like, all right, this is good. We gave up basically nothing. In the end, we're going to give up a fifth round pick for him, and I'm looking at his contract and I'm seeing, all right, he's an expiring deal at the end of this season. So,
Yep.
he's going to walk. Maybe we can get a compensation pick after this year if we really want it. So we can actually recoup the pick we gave up for him. So it's almost like a
Mhm.
net, wash. And then as I was looking at it, I realized he was an exclusive rights free agent. So he's not going to hit
Yep.
unrestricted free agency. We can tag him with a first, second, or original round tender. I do think the Jets probably hit him with either the original round or second round tender just to bring him back, because I don't know if they believe that Breece is going to be 100% by week one next
Mhm.
year. And then having a stable of friggin' Robinson and Carter and Breece anyway for what we expect to be a Super Bowl run and a push
Yep.
next season based on how we're playing this year. I think it's incredible. And seeing how Robinson's going to get utilized moving forward is going to be fascinating to see, because I really like the like 50-50 split they had this past week against Buffalo.
Yep.
And you saw how reliable they were, both of them, on that last drive. It was like a 7 or 8 minute drive. They know we're
Yep.
running. We know we're
Just
running, and we're just going to run it right down their throat. And that made me feel good to see, because it feels like, I guess in my mind, I wanted Michael Carter and a mid to late round running back in the draft. So in my mind, as much as I love
Mhm.
Breece Hall, I have Michael Carter as my starter and essentially a
Yep.
more
It's
groomed mid-round running back in James
Mhm.
Robinson. So I really like the move. I think Joe Douglas is playing some 4D chess with all this movement.
Yeah, and you mentioned too that play again, or that drive against Buffalo. 7 minutes on the clock, and you drain it all the way down. Looking back, I was watching, back at the film and stuff, and there was like 3 plays where they ran the same plays, three plays in a row, And that's a credit to the offensive line, and also obviously Carter and Robinson getting the job done. Robinson also had the touchdown catch in that game as well from Wilson. So, running backs, despite Brees going down, has still been, a solid group. Do you expect them to kind of continue to, in a way, I guess, kind of roll the hot hand, Carter number one, but if Robinson's hot, do you expect them to kind of go with him, or is it more Robinson one or Carter one rather, Robinson two? How do you see them kind of balancing it out the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think they're going to go with the hot hand. I think they'll start probably every game with Michael Carter just because he's the
Yeah.
incumbent. He's the vocal leader. I think it sends a good message to the guys in the locker room to have him be there anyway. But yeah, I think they'll get similar touches. One week it might be Carter gets 60% of the touches. The following week it might be James Robinson. And I think both guys can handle it really well. Like as soon as we traded for Robinson, you saw pictures of Michael Carter going up, talking to him about different things and like really taking on, like you said earlier, that leadership role. So yeah, I think they're going to go with the hot hand.
Yeah, I would tend to agree as well. And it's kind of shown a little bit already. And I think you'll see more of it throughout the final 8 regular season games here. So now you go to the receiver spot, which has been, interesting with the Elijah Moore stuff. I guess we could start with that. Then we'll go to everybody else. Your thoughts on Elijah Moore stuff? I was angry. We were winning. We were 4-2. And here's a guy, requesting a trade because he's not getting targeted, which to me is just ridiculous. I liked how the Jets handled it originally, but now it's like it's after the trade deadline. You got to get him involved. If you were going to trade him, if you didn't want him here, you should have traded him. Now he's stuck on your roster. You got to get him more involved. Your thoughts on the original trade request and how the Jets can get him more involved throughout the rest of the season?
Yeah, when I saw that come across my phone, I was a little surprised. I didn't see that coming. I know we were talking a little bit about like, some of the social media stuff has come off his social media pages and he doesn't have the Jets on there. And it's like, all right, well, that's a little weird. Some of his comments post game are like, all right, that's a little weird. And then the trade request comes in. I'm thinking, oh man, this is frustrating. How did we let it get to this point? Like, he's such a great player. Like, I'm more so like perplexed. Like, we're winning games. Why are you like causing a stink? You want the ball. I get it, but just kind of do what you're doing. Yeah. And then when we found out, just a little bit more, he's like, I officially want to trade. And I was like, all right, I'm done with this dude. I'm totally over it. And then we bench him and, he doesn't fly out to Denver. And then obviously the Denver game happens. You lose Corey Davis, you lose AVT, you lose Brees Hall. And then it's like, all right, well, you know what, mister, you can really earn my trust back if you win us some games here. And I don't know if he's going to be here long term. I think he's probably rubbed enough people the wrong way. But like you said, it's past the trade deadline. It only helps us and it only helps Elijah Moore if we get him involved in the offense. Because if our plan is to trade him in the offseason, you want to make him look as good as possible these last few games against really bad defenses like Chicago, like the Lions. And I think if you're able to highlight him, maybe you can swing him for another player in a position in need. Maybe it's a linebacker, a safety, an offensive tackle, something along those lines. Obviously over the course of the last 8 games, if he's happy and the Jets are happy and we can find a way to keep him on the team, we own his rights for the next 2.5 years. I think it sends I don't want to say it sends a good message, but like if a guy bitches and moans and he doesn't want to be on the team anymore, like they did with Denzel Mims, don't trade him. Like, hey, dude, you're here. You're with us. Whether you want to be a part of it or not, like we'll either activate you or deactivate you, but you're not going to get what you want. You're not going to be able to cry your way off the team. So I'm frustrated as a fan, but I'm cautiously optimistic of the future.
Yeah, because again, he's only in his second year. It's like he's got so much talent. We all kind of imagined or thought that it would be Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, the long-term answers. You've heard kind of Saleh talk about it, LaFleur as well, the possibility of moving him to the slot. Do you believe that's going to be kind of maybe what unlocks him here throughout the final games?
I hope so. He did play a few reps in the slot the last 2 games or so, but it's really a matter of when will he be progression 1 or 2? Because we heard from Zach, they're like, oh, what about Elijah Moore, getting him involved? It's like, oh, well, I'm just trying to do my job and go through my progressions. And that tells me LaFleur is not scheming for Elijah Moore to get the ball, at least through his first 2 reads. And for me, when I'm looking at Zach and based on how he's kind of performed and he gets the happy feet, I'd like to see him go read one, read two, and then run the ball or dump the ball off. And I think at least if Elijah Moore's in the slot and he can kind of work in some space, he kind of gets those opportunities that maybe a tight end might get, like Conklin, who he seems comfortable with, or
Mhm.
maybe Barrios or something along those lines. So I
Yeah.
think I think Elijah Moore will get some more opportunities, and I think it's in the Jets' best interest to get him involved.
Yeah, exactly. Like you mentioned too, the whole if you do decide to trade him in the offseason, you want to up his value. He obviously that'd be good for him because his value gets upped. And then even further down the road, if he does go somewhere else, contract wise, all that stuff. So it benefits both sides, which you nailed it right on the head. Now we go to the rest of the group. Corey Davis has been out the past couple weeks. He's looked up to this point or up to his injury. That Pittsburgh game in the fourth quarter, he was pivotal. He looked by far the best, most consistent he has looked as a Jet. Obviously, it's only his second season, but last year he had a lot of drops. There were a lot of just open plays that he just missed. Your thoughts on him before we get to Garrett Wilson, and hopefully he's back next week. I mean, we all kind of expect him to come back after bye, but he's not. Your kind of thoughts on Corey Davis so far, and do you believe he'll be back next week? That's kind of what Salah seems to be pointed towards, although you never know with their injuries.
Yeah, right. Like I feel like we should just keep quiet on all injuries because it's never
Yep.
never the correct
Yeah.
diagnosis.
Nope.
Corey Davis, I like Corey Davis, and I believe he's under contract next year for like $12 million or something like that. Which, as far as like wide receiver money goes, I think that's like the 28th highest paid wide receiver or something
Mhm.
ridiculous. So like even then, it's worth keeping him around, and you can tell he's very comfortable with Zach Wilson, and Zach is comfortable with him. He has been reliable outside of last year with some of the drops. I think for me, it's almost beneficial that he was knocked out because you're starting to see a little bit more growth with Garrett Wilson, and even like the little bit of
Mhm.
exposure that Denzel Mims has gotten to the like seeing some snaps and things like that. So it hasn't been that detrimental to us, but I am looking forward to getting him back because I think he's our most consistent wide receiver. I think him and Garrett Wilson are probably 1A, 1B, however you want to
Yep.
spin it. And obviously Wilson's here for the future, but I want our
Mhm.
best players on the field because I want Zach Wilson to be the best quarterback as possible. Like I could care less about anyone else.
Yep.
We got to get the quarterback right if we want to win.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you brought up Garrett Wilson there as well. He's been off to, I mean, a very good start. I mean, he had the very good game in Cleveland against the Browns, obviously, which was the crazy comeback, onside kick, all that great stuff. And then he kind of slowed down a little bit when Wilson came back, and you kind of were waiting for him to blow up a little bit with Wilson, at quarterback after getting healthy. The last 2 weeks, even the New England game where Zach threw 3 picks, he was getting him involved. And then against Buffalo, he got him involved. And to me, I'm so excited to see what they can do in these remaining 8 games because it seems like just right now they're hitting their stride. Zach and Garrett, the Wilson to Wilson connection. Your thoughts on him, and do you believe that this is going to continue and this is kind of a start of hopefully many games here throughout the remainder of the season where it's like there's just a very strong connection?
Yeah, I think you're starting to see the confidence that Zach has in Garrett Wilson
Mhm.
because Wilson initially, Garrett had a few drops early on in the season. We saw some in the preseason with Flacco and things like that, and
Yep.
it was like I didn't want to say head scratching, but it was like, oh man, I really wish he snagged that one. And
Mhm.
then you saw last year with Elijah Moore, it took until probably halfway through the season for Elijah Moore to really start clicking, and that's kind of what we're seeing with Garrett Wilson as well. So I think over the course of these next few games, as long as Zach and Garrett stay healthy, you're going to start seeing that develop, and it's really going to be an encouraging uh, pair that we're going to have going into next year. And it's the talent level that Garrett Wilson
Mhm.
possesses. He is tough to catch in a phone booth,
Yep.
and he can go up and get the ball. Like as much as he doesn't play the outside a crazy ton, I
Yep.
want him out there because he can outleap like 90% of the league.
Yeah. And another thing too, what I love about him and I love about Sauce too is he loves like he's competitive. Like he's got that fire to him. Like you could tell, I think even that game in New England, like you could see he was frustrated, Wilson, because that one play that Zach threw the pick on, he was open. And you could
Mhm.
tell he was frustrated. Like he just has that fire to him, similar to Sauce, where it's just like they want to win, they want to change the culture, and they want to come in here and be difference makers. You mentioned Mims a little bit as well, him stepping up. I've been pleased with Mims. I've actually kind of liked the way I think he handled the trade situation a little bit better than Elijah Moore. Um, but it seems like when Elijah Moore requested a trade, it's almost like a light bulb went off in Mims, and it's like, all right, now I'm getting an opportunity. And then with Corey Davis going down too, it's like I'm even getting more of an opportunity now. He had a big catch last weekend on third down against Buffalo. He's been very good in the run game with the blocking. Your thoughts on Mims and when Corey comes back, do you see him being a factor, or is he going to kind of go back to his normal role?
Yeah, I like Mims. When we drafted him, I was very excited. I was irritated when we traded down because I thought, oh no, we're not going to get
Yeah.
Denzel Mims, and we wound up getting him
Yep.
just a few picks later. So I really like him. I think he's got all the talent in the world. Um, I'm definitely pleased with what we're getting out of him. I think we saw that little bit of like hope in that final preseason game where he had like 100 yards, a touchdown with Strevler or whatever. And it's like, oh, that's what he could be. Well, now we're going to trade him, whatever. Doesn't get traded, stays on the team, gets his reps now. So I like what we're getting out of him. Obviously, still more like if I want to be nitpicky, the third down catch against the Bills, he body caught it.
Yeah.
There's always
Yeah.
things to improve, but he made a big time catch, and
Mhm.
he's got those skill sets to really create a large catch radius for Zach Wilson. And in my mind, I would love to see an offense with Corey Davis and Denzel Mims on the outside, just two towers that are big body
Mhm.
guys, can body corners, things of that nature, and then move Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore into the slot, and then you have Barrios come in whenever he can for
Yeah.
trick plays and whatnot. It's just tough because we want to be a running team. We want to focus on the tight ends, but then we have
Mhm.
a plethora of
Yeah.
talented wide receivers, and it's just so hard to get the ball to each one of those guys, especially when your quarterback's not necessarily clicking on all cylinders and you're only throwing 25 passes in a game. You know, by nature of the amount of weapons you have, you're just not going to have a ton of touches for any one particular guy.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a good problem to have. It's kind of
Mhm.
overwhelming at times with all these weapons, but I'd rather this than some of the years past with some of the receivers we've had
Oh
that they
yeah.
surrounded Darnold with. It's just it's yeah, they did not do a good job around him. So yeah, I totally agree too with your Mims point. Long, lengthy, very good one-on-one, was good in college one-on-one. Definitely been pleased with what I've seen the past couple weeks and hope that they can get him involved even when Corey comes back, get him involved a little bit more, because I do believe I was also upset when they traded back. I thought he was gone too. I thought we originally got kind of a first round talent in the second round. I was high on
Hmm.
him, so we'll see how it all plays out. But now we go to the tight end spot where it's been interesting because I went into the year with so much hope. CJ Uzama, Tyler Conklin, like it was just we haven't had tight ends like this in forever. It's just it felt so promising, and it hasn't. The last week was a little bit better. The past couple weeks, getting a little bit more involved. I think that fourth down and one play, Wilson rolled down, got it to Uzama against Buffalo. But it just kind of your thoughts on tight end position. It hasn't really been what I expected, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was a little surprised with how little we used the tight ends up
Yeah.
until recently. Early in the season, I want to say it was the first game, maybe first two or three games. Conklin had like 3 fumbles. I think he lost one of them,
Yeah.
and it was very like, oh no, what's going on? Like clearly,
Hmm.
through the green and white scrimmage and some of the practices, you could kind of see there was more of a chemistry with Conklin as a
Yep.
receiver than there was with
Totally agree.
Uzama, and
Hmm.
Uzama did have some injury stuff that he was kind of going through, so he was a little bit kind of behind the 8 ball. But it seems like they utilize him more so in the blocking game and Conklin more so in the passing game, which I do like. I think Conklin's a baller. I think
Hmm.
Uzama is a great locker room guy. I love seeing him mic'd
Yeah.
up and listening to what he has to say. And then you go down to Ruckert, who we drafted in the third round, and I really like Ruckert too. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not something that he's done this year, but it's the hope that of what he
Yeah.
could be in the future. And obviously, being a hometown guy, it's nice having
Hmm.
a Jet fan player as a player as well. And I think in the next 2 or 3 years he'll start to kind of click. Tight end's a pretty tough position to transfer into the NFL because you're learning blocking
Yeah.
schemes, a full route tree, and where Ruckert came from in Ohio State, it just was not really designed for the ball to go to him. He wasn't
Hmm.
necessarily the crazy pass catcher that maybe a Trey McBride was.
Yeah.
But I'm encouraged with where the tight ends are, and I think this is probably our best tight end room. I don't even know since when. It might be ever since I've been watching. Since
Yeah.
'95. I couldn't tell you a time we had two good tight ends, let alone a third one that I feel like is promising.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the days recently of, Ryan Griffin and
Hmm.
Dan Brown, and I mean, geez, Chris Herndon, who
Hmm.
forgot how to catch when he was here. But um, it has been interesting. You mentioned too with Conklin, like even that game against Pittsburgh, the one ball went right through his hands and it was an
Hmm.
interception. So you just like to see a little bit more. I agree with you. I feel like they're using this year for Ruckert kind of as a redshirt year, kind of
Hmm.
just bring him in, learn the playbook, play behind, be behind two veterans. But you nailed it right on the head with Uzama. Great locker room guy, funny, entertaining. Like, hearing him mic'd up is really, really pretty fun. So now we go to one more thing on the tight ends. Do you see them this weekend against New England? Do you see them getting him involved a little bit more? I think it's big for Zach to get some short throws early on, quick, 3-step drops, just
Hmm.
quick throws, tight ends. Do you see them utilizing them more this week in Foxborough?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of something that I've always looked at with New England specifically against, every other team. They threw those quick passes like within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and it's almost a run play, but a pass because the high
Mm-hmm.
percentage completion, it's getting your guy out in space. So now he doesn't have to get around all the offensive and defensive linemen. He's already out there. He's got to beat his man and maybe like a linebacker and a safety. So I like that aspect of it, and I do think they'll try to do more of those 3-step drops with quick passes. That bodes well for the running backs out of the backfield. It bodes well for the tight ends, and it bodes well for guys like Elijah Moore who might be making some
Mm-hmm.
some catches around the line of scrimmage. So I'm looking forward to utilizing the tight ends quite a bit against New England.
Yeah, it's just they're so pivotal. Big body guys across the middle, especially in the red zone. I would like to see a lot more of them get involved. So now we go to the offensive line, which has been wild. But it's kind of been just kind of cool to see all these random pieces, I guess, if you want to call them that, just come together, like the Nate Herbigs of the world, and them bringing LDT back. Um, First of all, we talked a little about Brees, AVT going down. Um, do you see when he comes back, where do you see them putting him in? Do you see them, do you think they roll with guard with him, with tackle? What do you see that? What is his future, you think, on the O line? What spot?
So it's interesting. There's probably a conversation to be had for do you move on from Tomlinson after this year because he's the
Hmm.
high ticket guy, and I don't think they will because he came here because of our offensive line coach. Our offensive line coach has done a great job. Uh,
Yep.
Tomlinson has been reliable from a health standpoint, even though the skill level may not match up to the price tag right now. But AVT is interesting. I think ideally you want to keep him at guard. I think that's where his highest ceiling is. And I think having the flexibility to move him outside to left or right tackle is just a bonus for us overall. So I do think they try to keep him at guard. At this point in the season, and the pieces that we brought in, Dwayne Brown comes in halfway through training
Hmm.
camp, doesn't get started until like week 4. Right tackle still, you know, a revolving door for the most part
Yeah.
all season since Becton and then Fant and then, Tomlinson
Yeah.
or not Tomlinson, then AVT and Mitchell, and
Mitchell.
it's
Yep.
just been a revolving door there. Then you bring in Herbig, who's had a really nice campaign so far, and McGovern's been
Hmm.
steady Eddie, the most consistent guy as far as like being on the field. And
Hmm.
it feels like this unit is greater than the sum of all its parts. Like I feel like each individual guy by himself are like, okay, they're fine. They're not going to make your team, a stud offensive line. But I think all 5 of them playing together as a unit has really worked well for the Jets, and I think that's a testament to John Benton and
Hmm.
and the players themselves that are really kind of showing out, given how many tackles we lost. I mean, AVT, Becton, or I guess you go Becton, Fant, Mitchell. And then eventually AVT goes down and Brown misses 4 games. And like just the revolving door that you've been able to kind of keep uh, a steady offensive line, at least I would say top 15 in the league, top 17 in the league, I think is impressive.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a lot of questions, at the end of this kind of off season, or at the end of the season going into the off season rather, where what do you roll with Mitchell, Becton, his whole weight, his knee, and then Fant will be a free agent. Where do you see them Do you think Mitchell could be the kind of the future? Do you see them rolling with Becton? How do you see them letting this all play out?
So what I think is going to happen is I think they're definitely going to let Fant walk in this offseason. I
Fant.
think he hasn't proven to be as good as he was last year. Granted, he was playing
Mm-hmm.
through some injuries this year, so I don't
Yeah.
know. It kind of depends how he plays when he does eventually get back.
Mm-hmm.
Becton, I don't think there's any way we exercise his fifth year option given his injury history. I think
Yeah.
we let him play out next year on his fourth year, rookie contract, and then you just figure it out after that. Let him compete for one of the tackle positions. Mitchell is interesting. I think if it were me and I'm looking at free agents, if I could go after one big free agent, Jack Conklin's the one I'm kind of looking at.
Yeah.
And if I could plug him into right tackle and forget about him for the next 3-4 years, and
Mm-hmm.
then have Mitchell kind of learn behind him, obviously, I think he's a strong backup. I think he could be our right tackle of the future, but with how much is riding on Zach, I think getting a
Mm-hmm.
Pro Bowl caliber guy in Conklin might be the way to go. At that point, you have Mitchell as your backup. And then if Brown decides he wants to come back next year, if he's got to have the offseason surgery, he elected not to
Yeah.
have it this season so he could continue. If he decides not to retire and come back, then you have him versus Becton at the left tackle. Obviously, you hope Becton wins that competition. You would love to have that be the situation. And then you have Brown back him up. And then I think you have a pretty good offensive line. But I don't think there's any way you go into next season with Becton on
Yeah.
earning his fifth year option. And I don't think you give him, a starting position without having to compete for it.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's crazy to think that Becton has not played a game in front of Jets fans, because of the 2020 no fans. You can't trust him right now with his injuries. And I totally agree, what the outline could look. It's been all over the place this year with so many different pieces, but it's surprisingly been a solid piece of this team. Like it's been solid considering all the movement. In past years, we've had a lot of movement and it's been bad. The Chume Doga and all those guys. It's been solid considering all the different pieces coming in and out. So now we go to the defensive side of the ball, which it's just been phenomenal. This is by far, in my life of being a Jet fan, this is by far the best defense I've ever seen. To see it go from historically bad last year to this year being one of the best defense by far that we've seen since the Rex Ryan days, probably even better than Rex Ryan's the defense. First off, we got to start off, apologies to Jeff Ulbrich. What he has done is just phenomenal. We got to fill out the apology forms. And this is just your thoughts on what he's done to this defense, and Robert Saleh included, being a defensive mind. It's been unbelievable to see this turnaround.
Yeah, it's been awesome. 32nd in the league in so many different categories last year to come in this year. And I think could compete with any offense in the NFL, even though we're not listed as the number one defense.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we are. That's a nice thing to see. And it's a testament to how they've built the defense and how they structured it and the coaching that was involved as well. And last year, everyone wanted to just hang Ulbrich out to dry. They're like, this guy's got to go. We have the worst defense. I'm sitting here, I'm looking like, okay, well, we just spent all our draft picks on offensive talent since he got here.
Yeah.
The key defensive players that we have had in Marcus May, who got hurt for the year last year with an Achilles, in Jamal Adams, who we traded away, in Leonard Williams, who we traded away, like all our top end defensive guys that we did have on this team were all sent packing. So he had a bare cupboard last year. And you go into this year and you see the relationship that this coaching staff has with players around the league and the impact that they have. You get guys like Whitehead, Reed, Tomlinson, Solomon Thomas, Quan Alexander coming in because of the coaching staff. And it's just been absolutely huge. The defensive line is playing well, which is, we were obviously without Curry and Lawson all of last year. You get those two guys back, plus you add Jermaine Johnson and you add Michael Clemens to just a great rotation. And then the pressure that they're able to create up front with just those front four creates the opportunities on the back end for the interceptions and the turnovers that we've been able to see this season. And then the areas of weakness that we've had, kind of like the linebackers, the safeties have been exceeding my expectation as well as the linebackers. But I think what's nice to see is when a coordinator or a coach can help make up the deficit in a given area because it's their expertise. And Robert Saleh was a former linebackers coach, so him having that resurgence with the Quincy Williams, with the Quan Alexander, with the CJ Mosley coming back is really what the doctor ordered. And I think all of it kind of complements each other, but it starts at the top with coaching, and they've done a really good job.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said there. It's been so much fun to watch. I mean, even watching last weekend's Buffalo, I mean, or 2 weeks ago, even the game, with Minnesota Buffalo, Vikings, despite, picking off, Josh Allen twice, they had a tough time stopping that Bills offense. And the week prior, I mean, we shut them down. I mean, we held them to 17 points and, forced Josh Allen into 2 picks, obviously Whitehead and Sauce. So we'll start with the defensive line, go a little bit more in depth here. I mean, it's been phenomenal. To start the year, it was kind of the whole rotations and all that stuff was confusing and it wasn't playing up to its ability. Now it's just dominant and it's been dominant. I mean, it really is fun to watch with Quinnen and Rankins, who's obviously out this week, but he's been a nice piece. JFM, I mean, Bryce Huff, Jermaine Johnson, all these pieces. Your thoughts on the defensive line?
Yeah, I've absolutely loved it. I think the pressure that we're getting up front is everything we've wanted for the last 15 years. Ever since we traded away John Abraham, we've been looking for that pass rush. And you have Carl Lawson, and losing him last year with Vinny Curry was like, oh man, what could it have been? That was gonna be our best pass rush. And to see them come back healthy and still perform that well, and then seeing Quinnen just feast because of the edge rushers, Quinnen coming alive and just having the season he's having makes me feel so much better because he is who I wanted in that draft. And I was having serious buyer's remorse watching Josh Allen getting sacks down in Jacksonville. And I'm like, oh man, maybe we should have gone with the edge rusher instead of him. And to really see him ball out and really be the best defensive tackle in football right now is impressive. He's got the most sacks of any interior defensive lineman. And I think he's going to get the bag this offseason. I expect somewhere in the realm of 4 years, $80 to $100 million. And he's going to get paid and he's going to deserve every penny of it. The rest of the defensive line, John Franklin Myers, love the hustle that we're getting out of him. I think he's having his best season with the exception of 2 really costly penalties. Obviously, the one against New England that negated the pick 6. And then there was one in the Cincinnati game that led, it was a third down. Would have been 4th down, and then obviously they had the long pass for the touchdown just a play or 2 later. So I have liked what we've gotten out of him, but the between the ears thing is something that's kind of been a little bit irritating. And then look, Bryce Huff, the dude, undrafted free agent, just having a monster season as a situational pass rusher. Jermaine Johnson, who he traded up for, I wanted him at 10. The fact that we got him at 26, I'm jumping out of my chair for it. He's coming on. It is not easy to tackle Josh Allen in open field. And Jermaine Johnson got him. Like, it's impressive. You look at Michael Clemens and just the intensity that he has. Everything that the Jets have kind of built on this defensive line for the last year or two is finally starting to come together. And I think what I'd like to see moving forward, I'd love to see Carl Lawson renegotiate his contract and to try and stay on this team and try to win a ring here, because a 4th round pick in Michael Clemens and an undrafted free agent in Bryce Huff have almost made Carl Lawson expendable at the end of this season. And it's like we said with the wide receivers, it kind of sucks because you have so many good players, but it's a really good problem to have after having, a barren cupboard for the last 15 years.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, couple things to, kind of piggyback off of what you said. Quinnen Williams, you look at some of the, I mean, maybe I sound biased, but you look at some of the statistical categories, he's better than Aaron Donald in some of the categories, not, all of them obviously, but I mean, he's been dominant. Bryce Huff, I was so frustrated the first couple weeks of the season when he was inactive. I'm like, why? I'm like, put him in, get him in there. And he's a guy that doesn't get a ton of snaps, but when he's out there, man, does he make a huge impact. And you mentioned too with Jermaine Johnson, I was, watching the draft and, I thought we might go Thibodeau at 4. We went Sauce, which I had no issue with. But then I'm like, all right, you probably go Jermaine Johnson at 10. We go Garrett Wilson. I'm like, wow, where's our pass rusher coming from? I'm like, this is interesting. And then to see later on in the draft, obviously later on in the first round, and you get Jermaine Johnson, you're just credit to Joe Douglas for doing his thing once again. It's been fun to watch. with Rankins going down, do you see, there's obviously been some talk about it. Do you see them moving JFM interior and then rolling with him, not fully, but do you see them moving him in? Obviously, they'll probably, I guess, Shepard too would be an option there. But do you see them moving JFM into the interior?
I would like to see them do that. I get the feeling they're probably not trying to do it because they've tried. I think they brought in 2 or 3 defensive linemen in for visits even
Mm-hmm.
before Rankins went down. So it felt like they were trying to maybe get a little bit of depth there. I'd like to see him next to Quinnen because I want to see
Yeah.
situations where it's Carl Lawson and then uh, Jermaine Johnson and Clemens on first and second
Uh-huh.
down or on like running situations. And then I want to see Bryce Huff in the pass rushing situations with Lawson on the other end. And I think you can really have some violence out there. You get your best players out on the field. And that's not to say that Rankins isn't one of our best players, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
think he has the pass rush capability that someone like John Franklin Myers on the inside next to Quinn
Yeah.
Williams could have. I'm fascinated to see how they handle it because we haven't seen them without Rankins yet.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, like you mentioned, how they go about it, and hopefully Rankins isn't out, too long. We'll obviously see because he's been, as a veteran, he's been nice, nice piece for us. I mean, even Clemens too. And what's so great about all this is, JFM, he got his, contract last year. He's still relatively young. Jermaine Johnson's a rookie. Clemens is a rookie. Quinton Williams is only going for his first contract. It's so much young talent, but Clemens he's scary. He is a scary guy. You watching his media,
Mm-hmm.
his interviews to just take, pauses, thinks, and then he's good. He's a scary guy that he's got a credible. I don't know if you would agree with this too, but and he showed us a lot in preseason. Like he sideline to sideline, very
Mm.
good. There was a lot of times in preseason where he'll be chasing the quarterback or running back all the way up until the sideline. You kind of noticed that too?
Yeah, he plays within the whistles. I haven't seen
Yep.
him, make late hits. He may have had one this season, but like he will punish you. He is a violent, intense individual, and it's
Mm-hmm.
fascinating that we were able to get him in the 4th round because the motor he has just does not scream 4th round caliber player. Like everything
Yeah.
I'm watching from him, like this guy's got to be starting. Like, but we're
Yeah.
burying him
Yeah.
on the depth chart right now, and this guy's like intense.
Yeah. He's fun to watch. So now you go to the linebackers, which CJ Mosley has been, I mean, great. Obviously, his first year gets hurt. Then, doesn't play 2020. And then last year was very solid, very good player for us. And this year is just, he's a leader. He reads, he could tell, he could see a whole lot on the offense. He's very smart. He could see things that not many other players can see. Your thoughts on CJ Mosley before we get to the rest of the group?
Yeah, CJ's been bittersweet for me as a Jet fan.
Mhm.
Like we signed him, and I was a little perplexed when we initially signed him. I was like, man, I didn't
Mhm.
really think linebacker was a need. We just had Avery Williamson have a pretty nice year, and then we saw the first game with him against Buffalo. He gets the
Yeah.
interception. I'm like, oh, this guy's gonna be awesome.
Yep.
Out for the season, like shortly after. And then he opts out
Mhm.
the following year, and I'm like, oh man, this guy's a massive cap hit and like
Yeah.
liability. And now we've got like new coaching staffs coming in, and like what's going on. And last year felt like maybe he was one of the bright spots that was just getting beat up because of the other bad areas of the
Yeah.
defense. And now seeing him play this year, he's got a ton of tackles. He's just
Yep.
exudes leadership, just
Yep.
perspirates leadership. And you see the guys really look up to him. He is a leader in this
Mhm.
locker room. He's the quarterback of the defense. And I know he's got like a $21 million cap hit next year.
Mhm.
I'm really hoping he reworks it because I don't want to have CJ Mosley leave this team. Before the
Yeah.
season, if you had asked me, I would have said, yep, we're cutting him. No questions asked.
Yeah.
But I would like to see him come back for the next 2-3 years, have him retire a Jet.
Yeah, I would. I definitely agree. He's just the leader is the biggest thing to me, and sometimes in coverage he's not the best, but
Mhm.
he lays some big hits, and he's just so smart and just I mean he's been in the league for a little while now. He's 30 years old, so he's got that experience, and it's definitely paying off. You now go to the other two, which to me, I look at as like Mosley's kind of the veteran, and the other two are like the Energizer bunnies. I mean,
Mhm.
Quan Alexander brings a ton of energy, and Quincy Williams as well. Your thoughts on those two guys? Quincy Williams, another hidden gem that Joe Douglas found.
Yeah, the two of them have been absolutely awesome, and you look at what they're able to do for the amount of money that we're actually paying them, and it's incredible because Quan, if we did not sign DJ Reed, Quan Alexander would be our best free agent pickup, and
Yep.
it has been huge. I think that's the reason we haven't been getting absolutely decimated by screens. I think that's the reason we were able to contain Lamar Jackson and prevent some of the running quarterback issues that we had last season. I keep coming back to the same word when I talk about this defense, and in particular, these linebackers, violent. They are like heat
Mhm.
seeking missiles. If you get the opportunity to tee someone up, they're going to take it and they're going to make you pay for it. And I think
Yep.
that's my favorite part about this linebacker core.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And the whole thing with Quan too is it's never been about, talent, energy.
Mm.
It's just been his injuries. Can he stay healthy? And so far, he's done a good job of that. And even Sherwood too. The game where against Buffalo, where Mosley came out, had to come out. Sherwood, made a little bit of impact. Your thoughts on him, and could you see him playing future, as a role, or playing in a bigger role in the future?
Yeah, I'd like to see him get some more reps, almost like a situation similar to like maybe a Corey Davis situation where someone goes down for a little bit or needs to come out, and we got to see a little bit of reps from someone that we
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen in a while. Um, Obviously, with Mosley's cap hit, if he doesn't want to restructure, I don't think he'll be back next year. And with
Mm-hmm.
Quan and Quincy both on expiring contracts, you kind of want to see what you have in the guys behind them,
Mm-hmm.
just in case you can't bring them back. So
Yep.
Sherwood being able to play a little bit against Buffalo was really encouraging to see, and I'd like to see him get a few more opportunities
Mm-hmm.
through these last 8 games.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely interesting. Guy, second year player at coming out of last year's draft out of Auburn. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of play all that out. And it's been a fun group to watch. Going into the year, you had your, I guess, questions, but it's been very, very fun to watch. And Quincy Williams been even better than he was last season. You now go to the secondary, which is just amazing. You go to the corners. I mean, all three of them. I mean, PFF is got all three of them are graded in the top 15. So, let alone we don't even have just two top 10 corners. We have three top 15 corners for the first time in forever. Your thoughts on the cornerback room? I mean, Sauce, Reed, Michael Carter. It's been just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, it's been impressive, and I thought Sauce was going to be very good. I was all on board the Sauce bandwagon at number 4. I did not I did not want Thibodeau there, and it was more so the personality that I think sort of triggered me. And it's not that I really didn't like Thibodeau. I thought he had a ton of talent, but I think you look at Sauce, you look at the length, you look at the athleticism that he has, and the maturity that he has for someone who's only 21, 22 years old. For him to come into the league and immediately be considered, arguably a top 5 cornerback in this
Mm-hmm.
league right now, and to know you have him under contract for 5 years, and like you're probably not letting this dude leave. He's that
Yeah.
good. The personality. I heard a story about the whole Elijah Moore thing where 3 veterans went, or three leaders in the locker room went up to Elijah Moore. It was Corey Davis, CJ Mosley, and the third one was Sauce Gardner. So for him to be able to take that kind of leadership role
Mm-hmm.
is in such a young age is really impressive. And cornerback's a hard position to transfer into the NFL. And we're seeing a lot of
Mm-hmm.
younger corners right now really excelling at that. You got the kid up in Seattle, the one in
Yep.
New England, and then you got guys like Surtain out in Denver doing well. But then you go on the opposite side of our formation. You got DJ Reed, and like I said, he
Yeah.
was easily our best free agent pickup. I mean, we got him for maybe 11 million a year,
Yeah.
and he is paying serious dividends. This guy, I would say, Reed and Sauce, not even factoring in Michael Carter II, but that tandem, I would almost take, or maybe I would take over Cromartie and Revis. I think Sauce can
Mm-hmm.
be the higher upside athletic Antonio Cromartie with like better coverage skills. And
Mm-hmm.
then Reed, while he's not going to be, Darrelle Revis by any stretch of the
Hmm.
imagination. If he can get 75% of what Revis was, now all of a sudden it's not like you're ignoring one cornerback all game like you were with Revis. You're
Hmm. Yep.
concerned about both sides. Like that is a huge thing to have to worry about, especially when you consider all these offensive teams across the league have more than one weapon. So you don't need one lockdown corner. You need a bunch of guys that can cover well. And that's where Michael Carter comes in. Guys in the slot. I mean, how many years did we see Tom Brady just knife us
Yeah.
with surgical precision with the slot receiver? Having Michael Carter be able to almost neutralize anyone who lines up in the slot is really impressive. And to know we got him in the 4th or 5th round, whatever it was, is just a testament to Joe Douglas again, knowing where he can find talent and not being afraid to make that move. And it's weird. There was this weird narrative all off season when it came to the draft and it came to free agency. Oh, you
Hmm.
don't need top cornerbacks to play in this defense. You need the edge rush. You need XYZ. They play a lot of zone. They don't play man. And then they go out and they get DJ Reed. They go out, they draft
Yep.
Sauce Gardner in the top 5. And it's like, all right, well, maybe you don't know any idea what you're talking about. You just need good players to play well on your team, and then everything else starts clicking. And the defensive line and the secondary feed off one another, I
Yep.
think. And then, the linebackers are that final complement, along with the safeties and
Mhm.
everything in the middle of the field. So it's been impressive to watch.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's been a lot of fun. The days of Daryl Roberts, Buster Screen, Tremaine Johnson. It's a lot of pain in the secondary. It's finally, and they're all young, and that's the crazy part. Even Reed being the veteran of the group. What is he, like 25 years old? I think.
He
He,
just turned
he's
26 last Friday.
26. Yep. So he too. He's on the younger end as well. So it's so fun. And you mentioned too with Reed, like I personally, when we signed him, I liked the move. I thought it was a solid move, but I didn't expect him to be this good. And another thing too with Michael Carter is, a lot of times, some of these quarterbacks are avoiding throwing to Reed and Sauce, and Carter's that other guy, and he's done his job as well. He's kind of been in a way the unsung hero of this secondary as well, where he's done a very good job in the slot. A second-year player that's made a big improvement from his rookie year. So it's been really fun. It's been by far the most talented secondary we've had in a very long time. So now you go to the safeties, which Joyner to start the year got off to a little bit of a rough start. He's been a little bit better lately. Whitehead's been, pretty solid as well. Your thoughts on the safety group?
Yeah, this was definitely an area of concern for me. Whitehead was someone that I could see the positive upside in. Early in the
Mm-hmm.
season, I really was not overly
Yep.
thrilled. I thought he did a lot of, hey, let me lay the hammer down and hit this
Yep.
guy, and then hopefully the ball won't, stay in his hands, and then we wind
Yep.
up seeing long touchdowns, like in the Bengal game. So
Yeah.
I
Tyler
think
Boyd.
he has rebounded nicely, and like you said with Joyner, I was high on Joyner last year prior to the season because we were moving him from the nickel that he played in Oakland
Yep.
over to his more natural safety position. And then he winds up tearing an Achilles in preseason. You're like, all right, well, you're not even getting the opportunity. So I'm like, all right, let's see what happens this year. He's going to be cheap,
Mm-hmm.
comes in, and like the first 3 games of the season, he was awful. He was
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely terrible. Miscommunications. And then you had DJ Reed come out. I think it was during the Bengal game or after the
Yeah.
Bengal game. We
Cincinnati.
got to
Mm-hmm.
simplify things. We need to get everyone on the same page. The same thing with Quinnen Williams. There's kind of a trend with those two right there. And then you saw the safeties start to play better. And I still think it's a little bit of fool's gold. I think we're probably playing above our talent level right now in that
Yep.
position. And I do think safeties probably going to be a pretty high area of concern for us. I would think second round in the draft is probably where we're going to look to try and replace Joyner with after the season. But I've been pretty happy with what we got in that secondary.
Yeah, I agree. It's been some nice production, but I mean, yeah, Joyner to start the year, and it was bad, but he's been better recently, and it's been good to see. To me, I mean, maybe I'm overreacting a little bit, but to me, I wish we never cut Pinnock because I really liked him. A young player in the secondary, very flexible, could play a couple different positions. A guy that very athletic. Your thoughts on them cutting him, and did you think that he could have maybe played more of a role, as a future after with Joyner and Whitehead most likely not being the long term answer.
Yeah, I definitely thought he was going to. It seemed like they liked Pinnock a lot.
Yeah.
I was surprised when they cut him. I don't
Yeah.
know what their long-term plan is aside from Whitehead. I mean, Whitehead is young, but I don't know
Yeah.
if there's anyone behind Joyner and Whitehead that they're really eyeing in any more capacity than like a backup. Like I still think we're looking
Yeah.
for that starting safety.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting to see how they handle that, in the draft or free agency or whatever. I don't think Joyner will be. I mean, I
Mhm.
guess we'll see what kind of future with him and how it all plays out. So now we kind of go into the game here coming up this weekend. Big, massive game. Foxborough for hopefully getting a win for the first time since 2015, and getting a win for the first time in Foxborough since Bart Scott can't wait. It's crazy it's been that long, but your keys to the game. We'll start with the offense, so we'll go to defense. Your keys to the game for the offense in order to get a win over New England.
Yeah, I want to see more of what we saw against Buffalo. I want to see the quick passes. I want to see Zach make a few plays with his legs, and I want to run the ball. New England's had a hard time stopping the run, both from the quarterback and from the running backs themselves. So I'd like to see us utilize that, eat a lot of clock, and make smart decisions. No self-inflicted wounds on the offensive side of the ball.
Yep, totally agree. Now we go, defense side of the ball. A stat I took out of last week's game, or 2 weeks ago rather, against New England, was they sacked Mac Jones 6 times. Got to get pressure on Mac Jones. That's kind of how my personal opinion. Do you agree with that? And what else do you need to see out of this defense? Solid running back in Stevenson as well.
Yeah, you got to get pressure on the young quarterback. It's the
Yep.
formula for success around the league. And Mac Jones can be rattled. I think I think we missed an opportunity last time. We should have had that win. We were the better team, and
Yep.
Zach just made a few
Totally
critical
agree.
errors. So if the defense can play like they did the last time around, you can continue to get pressure. Obviously, their offensive line is going to be a little bit better than it was when we faced them last time. But I do
Mhm.
think you can generate 4 or 5 sacks with the talent we have on this defensive line, and then you just trust your secondary to take care of business. I mean, if you can get the pressure with the
Yep.
front four and you're dropping 7 guys back, Mac Jones isn't going to have anyone to throw to. I am not afraid of
Mhm.
their wide receivers at
Yeah.
all. Their running backs are solid, but it's not something that I'm afraid of because if we had to, I feel like we can go man up against all their weapons and then load the box if we really needed to stop the run. So pressure up front with the front four, rattle the quarterback. If we can play with a lead, then it forces them to throw the ball,
Yeah.
which I'm very confident in our defense of.
Yeah, I totally agree. Forcing Mac Jones to throw would be huge. And you nailed it right on the head with the receivers. I mean, Jacoby Myers is probably their number one, and he too has missed a handful of games this year. So he's not it's not like we're going up against a Tyreek Hill or a Stephon Diggs or who we've done a good job against this year, which has been pretty fun to watch. So final thing is, what is your prediction for this game? And do you see the Jets finally snapping this 13 game losing streak?
Man, I hope so. I was
Yes.
saying it before. I was like, man, if we only could win one game the rest of the year, we had to go 1-7 these last 8 games.
Yep.
This is the game I want. I just want
Yep.
to. It's not even a monkey
I
off our
just
back. It's a silverback gorilla. Like that is
yeah.
that is the kind of cloud hanging over this franchise's head. I want to see 27-17, make it a 2-score game. I
Yep.
think the defense is going to come back pissed off. I think they're upset
Mhm.
they didn't get the win last year or last time around. And I think Zach will play similar to how he played against Buffalo just 2 weeks ago. And
Yep.
hopefully, last year when we came out of the bye, we got thumped by the
Yep.
Patriots.
Yep.
Last 2 years for New England coming out of their buys, they have lost. They haven't won a game with Mac Jones after a bye week. I hope that continues this week.
Yeah, I think too, going back to Foxborough for these guys, it was very pumped up locker room against doing a first time around. To go back where last year they obviously ran up the score to 54, 13 in that thump in the game that, Wilson got hurt with the knee. I think they're going to come back and they're going to play with a ton of energy. Personally, in my opinion, I think I have the Jets winning as well. I believe in this group. I believe that the number one thing is if Zach Wilson plays like he did against Buffalo, I think we win. I mean, because I think this defense is going to shut down Mac Jones. They did at home against New England. It was because Wilson threw the three picks. So to close things out here, really appreciate you coming on. Tell everybody where they can find you, social media, and your channel as well, which you obviously doing a lot of great work on.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. Jets Talk 24/7. I do live streams after the games. I do live streams Mondays and Tuesdays, as well as a few sprinkled in short videos throughout the week. Love talking ball. Have a bunch of, you know, maybe outlandish takes at times, but you'll always hear my honest opinion.
Yep. Yeah, it's a lot of fun having you on. You do the Talking Jets panel as well with Matt and Green Bean. You guys do a great job. Is that Tuesdays
Yep.
or
Every
Tuesdays?
Tuesday
Yep.
at 8 o'clock.
Yep. A lot of fun. A lot of fun. Really, really enjoy your content and really appreciate you coming on. So as always, that has been another episode of In the Trench with Gang Green. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for listening. Go Jets.